Okay, welcome. There was a little bit of hiccup there, but welcome to the Composers Roundtable episode 4. Hopefully, you hear us all this time. This time, we have a very special guest, Ben Osterhouse. We are very honored to have this guy with us. He's an amazing cello player, really good musician who also has dabbled in creating instruments and have created some fantastic instruments that I actually found out myself quite recently. And we're going to chat to him today. We have a few topics that we're going to go through. And actually, before I get myself into trouble, I wanted to ask a little bit if, Ben, you could introduce yourself a little bit and what you are and what you do.
Hello. Well, thanks for introducing me. I'm Ben. Yeah,
Welcome.
as you can see. Yeah, so so I play cello and I've been making sample libraries past couple of years. And the whole thing with making music in a DAW has always been something I've thought was really cool. And yeah, so it'll be fun to talk more about that. And yeah.
Well, yes, I actually have already a few questions for you, but I forget I'm a little bit rude. I do want to say welcome to Reid and Simeon again. They're here with us, and some of you have noticed that Matthias is not here. Unfortunately, he could not be with us this week, but maybe he will pop up in the stream. But so it was, too sad he's not here, but also Ben is filling his shoes, you could say, today. But I wanted to ask you immediately, I got really interested in this, Ben, how you started to do instruments, because I love sound and I love technology, and I have a brother who's really good into programming and all kind of stuff. But to me, and I would love to create instruments. That would definitely be the next step. But that to me feels like, oh my God, that's way too big of a step. So could you tell us a little bit how you got into that and how you learned about those things?
Yeah, well, while I was in grad school for cello, I was involved in the composition department, and I was interested in film music and game music, and how would you go about getting started with that. And so I talked to somebody who recommended, well, you need to start looking into sample libraries, and they said the Composer Cloud would be a good place to start. This was in, I think, 2018 or 2017. And so I got the subscription and was playing around with it, and I thought I had never messed around with that kind of stuff before at all. So it was really kind of eye-opening to see what is out there. And I just found it really inspiring. And I tried the strings libraries, of course, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. But also, I could make something like this. and like not something on this scale, of course, but just I tried making some things where I drop different samples into a sampler and mess around with them, and that's kind of what got me interested in this kind of thing. And then I got Contact in 2018 because I knew that's the one that you get a lot of power with, a lot of really neat options there. And I started learning the scripting language because I've been meaning to learn more about coding and scripting, and so that was kind of where I was like, well, here's one place to start with that if I want to learn more about scripting. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I got started.
Ben, did you have any experience at all with scripting or coding before you made these libraries?
A very long time ago in high school, I did take one class in Visual Basic, and I found it really, really boring. I didn't enjoy it very much. Although, so the stuff that I had to learn in order to do that, once I knew it, I just had this idea, maybe I should make a prime number generator. So I made a prime number generator, and I actually really had a fun time doing that. And then I showed it to my brother, and he was like, oh, well, here's how you could optimize that. And so that was, I don't know, that was just a little project. I never came back to it, but I did remember how fun that was once I at least knew what I was doing. And So but that was a very long time ago. I'm in a totally different headspace now. Yeah. I should mention my brothers and my dad are kind of into that stuff, and they've always said it's the new literacy. You should learn that stuff, and I never got into it until a couple of years ago. So yeah.
Yeah,
I was looking into the decent sampler, how to make a sample with decent sampler. It was like my brain just started going, whoa. I remember like programming BASIC on a TRS-80 in high school with the black and white CRTs and stuff. So it's like you get into that and it's just a whole other world, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yes.
You think it's going to be simple, and then it's not.
I was jumping out there a little bit. Do you have any recommendation if somebody wants to just start to try this out? What would be a good, simple thing to not get too overwhelmed to look into?
Well, there's a lot of ways. I mean, what I did, I think, is a good way, because actually you don't really need to do that. Like in Contact, you can make instruments without scripting if you just use the default features. And then you could just kind of start by trying one or two things to add on, like maybe try and script your own round robins or something like that. And I can see that being a good way to get started. That's kind of what I did.
I mean, it's really easy just to drag a bunch of samples into Contact and you're good to go with anything.
Yeah, so it's not really, you don't have to get very complicated with the scripting, but if you want to, over time, you can kind of get more and more into it.
And I wanted to ask you about your first library, which was Cello Textures. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, kind of what I was saying about with when I got the Composer Cloud subscription and was playing the strings. When I did that, I was thinking, okay, these are nice basic articulations, but I mean, there's all kinds of things that I like to do on my cello that are not basic, and are a little bit more niche. And so I wanted to make something where it would just be like a page that would contain a bunch of sounds that I like to make on cello, and they'd be kind of personalized in that way, and also hopefully sort of niche, because they aren't articulations that would be your bread and butter, I would think. So yeah.
How long did that take to make?
Well, I got Contact fall of 2018, and then I released it in April 2019. So I spent about 6 months just playing around with Contact, because it's pretty infuriating if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty small, simple library, but it took me a really long time to kind of figure things out.
How did you figure out how to get it into the wide world so people could buy it?
I just Google searched Contact instruments, and Contact Hub popped up, and so I emailed them and with what I was working on, and they liked it, and I decided to put it there.
Reid, maybe toggle your sampling rate real quick.
We have tried that already, but of course
you did.
Yeah.
I went to bad sound again?
Yeah, unfortunately. There's something we have to sound later. We do hear you, Reid. It's just a lot of cracks and pops. We can see if we can solve that another day. I've already showed the viewers a little bit. I can do it again.
Lute audio, yeah. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the goal is to make something that's not totally flexible actually. It's kind of it's less of something that you would use to make mock-ups and more of something that you would use to create a performance.
Yeah, no, but I think that's something I really want to hear more. Actually, we have a question here. Somebody says, I think Ben is one of the most talented musicians in the sampling world. I'm really interested
Aw.
to know. I'm really interested to know what are the upcoming sampling projects he is developing. And this is from, I can't say that name, Nuno Malo.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any upcoming
Oh,
projects?
I recognize.
Okay.
Yeah, I recognize that name. Yeah, I've seen him around. Yeah. Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, I have been working on something for quite a long time, and it's getting there. I don't know if I should, how much I should say about it, because it's kind of hard to,
As you wish.
yeah, messes with your head a little bit if you talk too much about it. But yeah, well, kind of the concept that, or something that I've been exploring more recently is figuring out how do you take, like how can you break a phrase into bits that can be rearranged in a way that's musical and natural sounding, and that's very flexible as well. And so to do that, well, I don't want to get too much into the technical details because it could get pretty boring pretty quickly. Once
no
you
worries.
see it, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I made the other thing that I really enjoy doing is figuring out this cool animations and figuring out a UI that looks unique and interesting and attractive and makes you want to play with it. And so so what I've been working on involves animating the width of PNGs and like
Oh, wow.
animating it to the to like the sounds that are happening, so you can see visually exactly what's happening as the phrases travel through the different like contours, or as they yeah, it's
Wow.
a little hard to describe, but yeah, so I just think it's really fun figuring out how to make visuals that animate along with what you're hearing.
So there's so many layers to what you're doing. You're not only musical, but programming, artistic, and then how to pull everything together to make sense and to connect with the end user. So you've got you've got so many hats that you've got to continue to put on all the time.
Yeah. I think the term is UX, user experience, and yeah, I showed what I was working on to a friend, and his first impression was, I'm so confused. This looks really cool, but I have no idea what I'm looking at. And it's like, yep, we gotta figure out how do we present this in a way that makes sense immediately.
It's very impressive, though. I just really like it. I mean, I don't know how old you are, Ben. It doesn't matter too much, but it seems like we are a little bit older than you, all of us here, and it's just I don't know. I can't speak for all you guys, but I have in the past at least focused on one thing. You know, we're learning the piano or something like that. But it does seem today that it's a pretty good idea to spread out your wings a little bit, and you're not only a cello player, you're also a programmer and maybe now a visual artist in a way, or you know, to program and get that in. And it does seem to me that that's where we're heading, sort of a multi something media. It's not just one channel. We have to sort of do many things to so even though it's an instrument that somebody can use, it's still a piece of art in there because it's your performance and also your then visual media at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And that's what I see happening with a lot of libraries, is that it's just not a library. It is a representation of who the musician is, who the programmer is, because every library has a personality to it, and it's the personality of the developer. It's not like just going to the shelf and picking something off the shelf of the grocery store. You are handling something that's very personal to the developer, and we just sometimes can take it for granted. We plug it in, and we have all of this marvelous things going on, but yet behind that has been years of discipline and years of learning and programming, trial and error, a lot of effort and time. And so it is what is so valuable. The value is in recognizing the person that is behind the code, the person behind the code. And that's why it's just so great to see Ben again, and to be able to have him continue to share his story, and for people to get to know the person behind the code. It just makes it so much more interesting when you take that instrument and play it. It gives you such a great appreciation for what you have.
Yeah.
What struck me about you when I first saw StringFlow, which is the first instrument I got, I didn't get that was the second one you did. And it seemed to me that this idea of making virtual instruments has been proceeding over like a decade or two. Gradual improvements, same people involved in it, and somebody will have an idea like legato or whatever, and then it sort of floats over to... Is my sound terrible, by the way?
Unfortunately, it pops, but we hear you.
Anyway. So, but what I felt about you is that you were young and you were relatively new to this. So you weren't carrying the baggage of all that other stuff. So your ideas were very original. You were creating products that didn't exist because, I guess you were working against that, but, did you start from the idea of making things that you'd like to see that you didn't see as available?
Yeah. So on the agenda, or I don't know if we should call it the agenda, but on the outline, one of the things was talking about how do you compose. And the way that I've the way that I got interested in composing and have composed a lot is just recording a bunch of instances of myself and layering them together and things like that. And when you do that, a lot of times you end up doing the same thing over and over again. And I kind of saw this as, hey, maybe I could, make myself exponentially more productive if I just spend the time to record a bunch of things that I really like and then piece them together later. And so yeah, at the beginning, that was one of the ideas was, for my own use, figuring out a new way to edit, not necessarily to make an instrument, but a new way to edit different performances together.
You're giving me lots of ideas now. This is really interesting. I was good you started this because I also wanted to ask that. So do you find that you actually use your own instruments when you compose nowadays?
So when I started, I did, but the thing is, when you spend so much time working on something and every time you open it up, it's like, okay, what problem am I gonna find this time? You start to have some trepidation when you're composing.
It's like a PTSD.
Yeah, it's a little bit of PTSD. So, I try to use them, and actually recently I have kind of used the ones from a couple of years ago, and yeah, and then it's good when I do use them. But yeah, there is a little bit of that element there. Yeah, and it's actually really interesting opening them up more and exploring them a little bit more, because for instance, I was using one of them this past weekend, and there was this feature that I had forgotten I had added, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool. I'm so glad that I did that. Past self. So it's kind of fun to see. Or it's also when you open up one of the patches and it's like, it was 18 knobs. It's like we don't need 18 different controls here.
Oh,
So yeah, that's another thing that you notice when you use your own instruments is, were these good decisions? I don't know.
that's interesting, actually. Oh, I got a go ahead. Sorry.
Ben, do you think you compose more or less now that you're making music? Virtual instruments.
Sadly, I'd say I'm definitely composing a bit less. But about that though, one of the ideas as I was continuing to make these sample libraries was that this would give me a deadline to finish things, because you need to make demos to show off the instrument well. And so, while that's not a huge, I don't spend as much time doing that as I would like, because it takes so long to do all the other things. That is a part of it that I'm really glad that I get to do.
Do you think that creating instruments changes the kind of music that you write now that you've been doing this? I mean,
yeah, it's. I think I was. Actually, yeah. So, previously, I tended to get kind of stuck in the details and try and make all of my own sounds, but just kind of seeing more about what's out there and what you can do with sample libraries, it kind of makes me realize, there are shortcuts here that I could be taking and could be getting better results. So in that way, it definitely has changed how I write, because it's I think I'm thinking a little bit more big picture than I used to.
Isn't that what composing really is? Kind of problem solving. That's the way I see it anyway. And you start to make things to make it easier for you more and more. So you come up with concepts. Actually, there's a question here from Tras Muso, if I didn't butcher that name. Do you see yourself one day, Ben, in the future, branching out into making libraries for other instrument families, brass, percussion, anything?
Yeah, I don't know how many more string libraries I can make. It's like I'm going to run out of ideas at some point. So,
actually, before you say in that string libraries, do you play all instruments, or is it a cello sample down, or do you actually play the violins and the viola as well?
yeah, so far I play all the instruments.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Cool.
And in order to play the viola and violin, I just play them like a cello, and I can get a pretty good sound that way. Especially if you're just doing little tiny bits at a time.
Yeah, no, it does. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So you actually hold them. You hold them like a cello.
Yeah, that's kind of silly, but it kind of works.
You do? All right. Okay.
Yeah. I looked at in the recording sessions. You look at how many takes each one of them took, and the cello ones, it's like, to find something I liked, it was like maybe 4 takes. It would be about 4 takes for each sample, and then you look at the violin and viola, and it's like I'd be trying for 10 takes for every single sample.
Wow.
It took forever, but I know the sound that I want to get, and so it's just a matter of taking the time to get that eventually. So probably be faster to just hire a friend who really can do it better. But yeah, it worked. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I was wondering
it's also
where
you.
you
It's also your
record.
performance, Ben. Sorry, Reid. I just want to say it's also your performance.
Yeah. There are things that I really did intentionally that I would have been harder to communicate to somebody else.
Sorry, Reid, what were you saying there?
I was just going to ask where you record and whether all of them have been done at the same place.
Yeah, they've all been done in the same space. It's at my parents' house. It's very quiet and very well insulated, and the bedroom where I used to live is carpeted and full of boxes. So it's a very dead space in there.
Yeah, it's hard to find that.
So so it's more like VSL than like Air Studios, your space.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you gotta do what you can to get the best results with what you have. I mean, acoustic treatment and just err on the side of making it as dry as possible, and then you can add reverb later.
Actually, that ties into the next question a little bit. What I thought here, if budget was not an issue, what would be your dream large-scale sampling project? Because I was thinking maybe you go to Taj Mahal and then you record the sound you get there, something like that.
Yeah. Um, um, so the thing about this is that I do kind of like the approach that I've had where I'm not sampling standard things, because I feel like there's a lot of orchestral libraries out there already, and that's very expensive to do, and people have done it. So if I were to do something large scale, it'd have to not be just orchestral. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, but I know one thing that I think would be fun to play around with more is just the idea of like ambisonic stuff, and having lots of different mics in different places in a room, and seeing what you can do with like positioning yourself. Like, for instance, if you could have like if you could have a room where if you played in different parts of the room, it would, and you could really, the mics would really pick up the location a lot, and then just like record from lots of different places on lots of different instruments, and just experiment with seeing how that affects the blend and stuff.
I was
That
thinking
kind of stuff I think
Stockhouse
would be
and
fun.
the 4 helicopters. If you had any money, you want to do that?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could see like an XY pad just sort of moving around through all these different textures.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think I would have my own sample engine, which would have lots of really powerful things you could do, like maybe something that was kind of like a combination between a game engine and a sound engine, something like that would be cool. But all that stuff takes a lot of time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to say again, though, I think you're, for me at least, I think you're doing the right thing. You mentioned, there's a lot of libraries that have been done already, and maybe when you're starting out with libraries, I don't know, maybe your libraries is not what you look for. I don't know, but for me, it was just this is what I need. It's been lacking. I haven't seen it anywhere. So I think you're doing great, filling that hole. Absolutely, yes.
Good, yeah.
I don't know if any of you have ever gone to one of those websites that talks about all the different sounds you can make on a violin, and you think that everything's been done in all like these crazy Spitfire libraries that have all these different things, and in fact there is so many more articulations on a string instrument than anybody has ever tried to do with a virtual instrument. So I think, even sticking with strings, you could keep going for a long time with all the things that you like to do. You like to do arcs, you like to do different kinds of volume changes within your samples.
Just think about what they do with Spectrasonics, their psychoacoustic sounds, they're burning up their instruments and all kinds of stuff, so yeah, don't do that, but there are lots of things you could do. We have a question here, by the way, or two even. We'll start with Tatiana. Ben, I'm not yet familiar with your libraries, but do you include more modern, avant-garde, cello, extended techniques, or do you plan to do in the future installments?
Yeah, not too much avant-garde, just kind of nice expressive stuff is what I've gone for. I suppose I do have, I did do the Ponticello crossfade with the dynamic layers, so that's a little bit avant-garde, I suppose. But yeah, for future plans, I mean, one thing that's fun to play around with is horror strings, figuring out how do you layer together lots of different sounds made from your cello that still sound like a cello, but that are also really sound designy and really, really rich and scary.
Oh, you might have tried this already,
think-
but I was thinking you could always use your bow on other things. That is
Oh,
not a
yeah,
cello.
that's another thing.
Sorry, Reid.
I think
Yeah.
your English-based instrument has a lot of sound designy stuff that could be used,
Yeah.
don't you think, for avant-garde?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, by just doing different percussive things and recording different sounds from it, just because of the largeness of the instrument, just everything had this kind of like low formant, you know,
Yeah.
where the sound designy things, I mean, they didn't necessarily sound like a bass, but you could still kind of tell they were from the same object.
All right. Should we take one more question here? Ben, so you have played the instruments and engineered the sessions, question mark. Or did you have someone else hitting record at your signal?
No, I do all the recording and stuff.
Yeah, it must be tough, actually.
Yeah, getting into the flow of things can be tricky when you're like juggling, okay, I got my laptop over here and mics and don't trip over the cords, and it's but you know, you do it enough and you can kind of get into a rhythm and still be able to make the sounds that you want to.
Excellent. Oh, Tatiana says here, maybe you should try going granular, or question mark. I don't know. Is that something you're interested in?
Oh yeah, I've been playing around with making granular stuff in Contact. I've made a few granular things. I don't know if it would be stuff that I'd want to release, but maybe I'll put out some examples of it, of the things I've done. I mean, you just end up with all these crazy mashed up textures, which are kind of cool, but also it's like I don't really see what use there could be for this. So yeah.
When you start the recording process, do you always have a plan for what the final instrument is going to be, or does it develop once you start working? Does it go in a different direction?
Yeah, sometimes it goes in a different direction. And yeah, it can be pretty messy process, which is why it can take so long, because you have an idea in your head of, okay, it's going to turn out like this, but then you start recording and you realize, actually, this isn't going to turn out very well. You know, we need to reevaluate here. So yeah, I do kind of change my mind a lot.
All right. So I just wanted to say to everybody listening to the podcast, either now live. If you're here live, feel free to ask any questions if you have any for Ben or for us. Also wanted to say we do have a giveaway with this episode, but that is going to be not on the live stream, but later. So if you are listening to this podcast now, afterwards, when it's live, then you can always leave a comment, and then you will have a chance to win one of Ben's amazing instruments that are anyway, otherwise really recommend that you check out. All right. Are there any more questions we want to ask Ben about that, Reid or Simeon? Simeon, you haven't said anything in a while, so just want to check with you.
Well, I think what Ben's talking about with the ambisonics and it reminds me of what Audio Brewers is doing. They are really doing a lot with ambisonics, and they've got a brand new library coming out tomorrow called Tangent. And I can't really say too much about it until tomorrow, but it is like going to be something like what Ben was mentioning earlier about how to take samples and break them apart into almost different elements of the samples and still have things be musical. So it might be interesting, Ben, to reach out to Alejandro at the Audio Brewers, because there's some really cool things they're doing. Like with the positioning and things, I was surprised with VSL's Great Rieger organ. I had read a post on VI Control where one of the engineers was making some comments how they actually used ambisonic mics during that sampling session. So ambisonic seems like it gives you an interesting way to record something and change the mix after the fact, which makes it very powerful. And with the things that we're going into, I think, we are on the very bleeding edge of immersive audio, and I think Apple is kind of pushing that forward a little bit by introducing that with their Dolby and the submersive audio, the Atmos and stuff. So I think, the earlier that you can get in on something like that and begin to experiment, I think it's a very exciting prospect to be able to sit with a pair of headphones, just headphones, and it immerse you into a totally new environment. So it's an exciting time, and it's very exciting for you because you're just getting on the ground floor of all this. So there's a lot of great adventures and discoveries ahead for you and for all of us. Yeah.
I think you're right. Actually, I just wanted to say that I've tried a few of those instruments that have a bunch of small, tidbits or wave files or sounds, and then you sort of click random, and then you get new sounds. The whole point is that you can get sort of this endless of combination. But the problem with a lot of those is that half of them really are not that good. I mean, it depends what you're after, but they just doesn't really become an interesting playable sound. Like somebody says there's an infinite amount of possibilities. It's a very typical cliche, but maybe only a third of those are really useful. So it's the same thing here, that it needs to be instrument that also have that in mind, that it's not just random, but it's also useful sounds, even though they're random, And I've seen, I forgot who it was, typical me, I always forget, but I saw a new synthesizer the other day that had really incorporated that they have random sounds, but they're still, I don't know how, they program it in so that it's all still useful within the context. And just wanted to add that. That sounds interesting what you're saying, Simeon. Okay, should we guys move on with the docket, or yes?
I had one more question I wanted
please.
to ask Ben.
Go ahead,
which was, you've done the viola da gamba. So I was wondering if you ever wanted to try some world instruments that are stringed instruments and do something with that, because there's so many bowed instruments in the world that you could work with.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Like,
nyckelharpa.
Yeah, well, that would be something to research more, definitely.
You just see the lights, you just see the lights in Ben's eyes just start, there's a lot of dreaming going on, and that's what is exciting,
But Ben, do you know the Scandinavian instrument? Well, I don't know if it's Scandinavian. Maybe I said that wrong. Well, the nyckelharpa, key harp would be the translation. It is sort of a violin that you have buttons on, so you don't use your fingers. Well, you press. Sort of, it's a whole mechanism, almost like a piano. That it looks like a violin of sort. And they have two versions. One of them, when you actually use almost like a hurdy-gurdy, you go around with the wheel. That's one version. And another one is when you have a very small bow that is very, very short, and it has that kind of a medieval sound. So that's something you could maybe.
Yeah. You guys have probably heard of Diego Stocco.
No, I haven't.
Oh, yeah. Spectrasonics, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now I follow you.
Yeah, he does some really cool stuff, and he just invents all these instruments, and they just look and sound amazing. And I think ATO has a couple of things like that, where it's like this custom-made instrument. I think that's a pretty cool approach.
Well, in the early Omnisphere days, Diego was in a lot of the videos, the Spectrasonic videos, showing these instruments that he made and sampled in some of the original Omnisphere stuff. The psychoacoustic stuff, I think that was Diego. The singing bowls and the 3D stuff, he's a legend with that stuff. Yeah, fantastic.
I was bowing everything, like light bulbs and
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this video, the bowing the tree, makes a song out of a tree.
Oh, really? No, I haven't seen that. That's amazing.
Nothing is safe. He's coming out.
Yeah, he's like bowing on the little twigs and stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can bow. So,
Yeah.
you could stick with this, with what you know, for a long, long time. I think it would be really, I'm trying to imagine what it would mean if you did like a woodwind library or brass library, because it's like you're performing all this stuff yourself.
Mm.
Yeah. So a little bit off topic, but
No worries.
about the recording process, one thing that the place that I've found that I mess up is when I lose track of time, and then there will always be a couple of things where, oh shoot, I forgot to record that. Now I have to go back and re-record it. And just thinking about how to avoid that, as I've been testing things out, doing like this draft recordings things, I've written everything out in notation. It's a little bit of a pain, but just put it all in a sheet so you can go down, check off, okay, did I get everything? And I really like that approach. And it also made me realize, I bet this would be really helpful if I wanted to collaborate with somebody and had them record themselves in their own studio. I bet they would probably appreciate having the sheet music and order everything really well organized. And so I've been thinking, for collaborating with other people, I can just find somebody, send them, this is what I did, here's how I recorded it, here's the kind of sound that I was making, what kind of sound can you make that you think would fit well together with what I've done, and then here's the music that I used. So that's kind of the plan. But I gotta finish stuff before I get to that point.
So you can make any kind of library then, as long as you reach out to people more.
Yeah, just reach out to people and just start with working with individuals, not ensembles at first, because you want to see what can just one instrument do, and then go from there and figure out what can we do with an ensemble next. So that's my thinking, at least.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do for sure. I just was thinking of what Reid said. Yeah, I think you have endless possibilities almost here. I mean, the next thing maybe is also combine instruments. I don't know. I mean, you have done that already, but I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's something that you were mentioning. So I listened to the other 3 episodes, and something that you were mentioning in the first episode was, like, on the one hand, having pre-orchestrated instruments is not necessary because you can just layer them in together yourself. But at the same time, sometimes it can be, you get a better result because those orchestrated instruments were designed to be in tune with each other really, really carefully, especially even if they were recorded at the same time, not just layered together after the fact. And so it does make you think about, what kinds of special things could happen when you get people in the same room together.
It's the cohesiveness of things. So when you have detached elements trying to bring them together instead of them being together, starting there in the first place. So they're already cohesive here. So that gives you probably a better result than if they were pulled from here to here and then stitched together somehow. I think that's the magic of an orchestra, is how they listen to each other and they create this amazing sound. It's almost like when a vocalist is trying to stack their own vocals. It gets very weird. Or you can have 4 separate vocalists singing, and something different happens with that because of the blending and things. So,
absolutely.
There's just magic that happens when you have all of these individuals coming together. That you can't really replicate that necessarily by just taking individual instruments and stacking them together.
Absolutely right, Simeon. But I also want to say I will give Ben some credit because I've tried other instruments where you sort of have several solo instruments together, and it kind of gets what we call the church organ effect. But for some reason, even though these are individual recordings, because Ben can't play at the same time with several instruments, you still manage to do this really well. I find that even if you play like crazy piano chords, at least on the oscillation strings I've tried, it does not give me the church organ effect. It still sounds like all these instruments play together. And I don't know if you ever thought about that, if you're lucky or if you're, but that is amazing. I really want to say you really managed to do that one well, because a lot of libraries don't. You can tell, even expensive ones.
Yeah, yeah, and I do have some thoughts about that because so Spiro Strings has been really popular, which was surprising because it wasn't such a big project, but sometimes the biggest things aren't the most helpful. And for my own projects, I use the Spiro Strings and I think, yeah, hey, this actually is really useful. I want to use this, and the reason I think that it's useful or that it fits into the mix well, and I've heard this from other people as well, like they can just stick it in and it's not going to mess stuff up. It'll be there and it'll add something, but it won't overpower. And the thing is, the way I recorded it, there's a lot of like motion in the sound where it's not sustained at all. There's always crescendoing or decrescendoing, and that, I think that motion is what makes it fit so well into the mix. It's like a lot of times, or like when you play two notes together, the way that because the motion is random, they kind of go back and forth. You can hear one being prominent and then another being prominent, and it's kind of a nice interplay. And I think that's why you don't get that church organ effect. And then for oscillations, yeah.
Can you describe what Spiro Strings is for people don't know it?
It's a very simple library. It's swells and sustains on all of the string or violin, viola, cello, and bass. So it's like four articulations. The swells articulation actually consists of a bunch of different length swells, and you choose which length swell you want by just dragging a slider back and forth. So yeah, it's actually like 7 articulations, but it looks like it's only 4.
Wow.
So yeah, then I think that's why oscillation strings for you, Sam, is maybe the same, because the articulation that I chose to record isn't sustained, and so, and also between each of the samples, there is definitely some difference in like how long and the way that the pulses are shaped, and so that also helps avoid the make things have variety.
Yeah, phasing effect. I was wondering, I don't know this. I'm not going to name any names, but I've tried a few sort of solo string libraries from various bigger vendors, and I don't know if they record them and then they sort of pitch correct them afterwards, because no matter what they do, something is off. It sounds really, really weird when you put them together. It's too perfect. Like, I don't play the violin or cello, but it just can't be that straight. And the recordings might be nice, but there's something, and I wonder if they do that sort of to just save time. Oh, well, they all tune now. We don't have to worry about tuning. What do you think about that, Ben? Do you think it's something like that? Because I definitely notice it.
Well, I mean, I auto-tune my samples.
Yeah, but let's say like this then. I also use my voice in a lot of stuff, and I've definitely used auto-tune, but anyone who has done this, hopefully they've realized there's a limit, because if I put it too much, the church organ effect becomes. So you have to find a mid ground. Obviously, it can save you some time, but I was wondering, because I don't feel. I mean, I'm not a violin player, but I don't feel like you auto-tune it, and I don't mind that you have, but I don't want it to sound that way, and I feel like some more commercial libraries, they've done it too much.
That shows you the artistry again, because you're not heavy-handed with it. I hate. There was a vocalist. I don't know if I mentioned it before on another podcast, but it was like he was bragging about how he could make his voice sound auto-tuned, and it was like, you know what, that's crazy, because it sucks the life out of things if it's done overly done. Now I use Melodyne a lot when I'm working with soloists, but I'm not going to just slop it on everything. I'm going to say, okay, what is what are the worst notes? Because I want to maintain the heart and the life of the performance. And when you suck that out by over applying those types of things, it just defeats the purpose. But just like what, yeah, if you don't know it's there, then you've done it right. And if you hear it, then you've done too much. The moment that you can hear an effect, it's too much. And so that's another testimony to Ben for just having that sense of taste, good taste, and not overusing things. It's fabulous. Yeah.
That reminds me, you guys might know this, but I've heard that early synthesizers, those enormous, expensive ones, big as a room, that in a way they were quite powerful. I mean, they could do a lot, but one of the reasons they sounded so unrealistic when they were trying to mimic various instruments is because they didn't live in the dirt. All the sounds, all the air, all the brush, everything that is in the instrument. They just had sort of the waveform. This is a waveform of violin, and just that. And they didn't have all the sounds that instruments create. And
the soul was sucked out.
Yeah.
And it's like with the old mini Moogs and the modulars, when it would heat up, it would go out of tune.
Yeah.
Or the tuning would drift just a little bit. And it's those things. A Hammond B3 is just a monster of mechanical sound going on, and sometimes things would just be a little wonky or whatever, but that's what makes it alive.
Yes, but I'm still happy I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What struck me about your instruments when I first discovered them, like with the original string flow, well, you always seem to put movement in them. So it's either like an ostinato or a crescendo. Something is always happening. And the first string flow was very simple. It would do an ostinato of the chord that you were playing. But then if you moved your hands around and did inversions, it also did an ostinato of this. And it followed, in a way that I found very musical. And then when you hit the mod wheel, you change the sound. I mean, what was it when you got the mod wheel up? It was a different articulation.
Playing closer to the bridge. It was like
yes,
getting that real that gnarliness to it.
Yeah.
So there was like this kind of constant motion. It was in sound and in the ostinato, and that I felt kept it. And I find that in almost everything you do, keeping it musical by keeping it in motion.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, because as soon as you stop moving, then it sounds like a synthesizer or something, or not like a synthesizer, but it sounds synthesized.
Well, getting back to the way we hear things, it's just like if you're in an office building and somebody is doing construction on the sidewalk and they're tearing up the sidewalk. Well, you're going to hear it at first, but then they're still doing it, but you're still in the office and you don't hear it anymore.
Yeah.
Until something changes, and then they're still out there jackhammering, but you were totally oblivious to it because your brain has a tendency to tune out things. So we've got some barking dogs next door, and they always love to bark at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So we have an ALEXA device, and I have to spell it out, or she'll start butting in. But there's so my wife will roll over and say, ALEXA, play Ocean Waves. And so the ocean waves come on. And so it helps to mask that. So our ears and our brain are so amazing how we hear things. And I just call it the jackhammer effect. So when things are looping and static and everything, you stop hearing it. But like what Reid is touching on and what makes Ben's library so interesting is that little motion every once in a while, it re-engages the brain. It re-engages you, and as you're playing, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way thing. I'm sorry to sort of promote myself, but I always talk about this in my own videos, that you have to have movement in everything, and in particular in strings. And I'm not even a string player, but I've just noticed that by working at that, if you don't have some movement in there, it's flat. It doesn't.
Well, that's what I was going to actually mention your video, Sam, because that was really wonderful how you illustrated that. Just not holding a chord, especially for keyboard players. It's very difficult for keyboard players to translate that. So I've just kind of said, okay, bass, cello, viola, violin 1, violin 2. So I'll just have 3, and I'll just kind of move those things around. So that video that you had about that, it was really fascinating because it's got to keep moving, even if it's just a slight movement. It just keeps things real.
Yeah. Actually, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask.
So about
So no, go ahead, Ben. You first, and I'll ask you
yeah.
later.
So about piano players, um, that makes me think of something that a piano teacher told me once, where I was playing something slow, and he could tell when I wasn't listening to how the notes were decaying. Because, yeah, if you listen to how the notes are decaying really, really closely and give a lot of attention to it, it changes how you'll play as a pianist. So it's just got me thinking about that. So what were you going to say, Sam?
No, lots of things, but just spinning on this first. Like I always say, singing is so good because you have to breathe, so you naturally decay when you
Yeah.
sing your lines. In a sense, you can just hold down, but that's the same thing. Obviously, a cellist doesn't have to breathe. Oh, well, yes, they do, but not in the same way. But in order to get a natural line, I always say singing is pretty good, so you get that sort of natural flow. But I wanted to say something that is maybe just I'm interested in this is that I always wanted to recreate the sound of Baroque strings because that's a very specific thing. And I thought I could ask you as a specialist here, Ben, because in general, there's very little vibrato, right? And we're also talking about tuning before. And for me, when you listen to really good Baroque players, it does sound like it's almost like perfectly auto-tuned. I mean, it doesn't sound like that, but they're so tuned, they're so well tuned, a good orchestra is, that you don't hear any, I don't know how to say it, but it sounds so clear and clean and crystal. And I always wonder how you could get that sound. I don't know what my question is here, but I was just thinking about that as we're talking about tuning. And I'm thinking that we're not talking about perfect tuning like this is 440 hertz, but that they're so tuned with each other. So even though nobody is vibrating, it sounds really perfect. I don't know. I don't know if you can say on that, but just wanted to mention it.
Yeah. So, well, I've been interested in Baroque music in general as well. I knew a couple people in town who, so my mom teaches violin, or she used to teach violin, and for her students, she did this thing where there's a Baroque violinist in town who's really good, and he's really into teaching Baroque style of playing. And so they did a class where he taught them kind of as a group to play as an ensemble as best they could in the Baroque style. And I just joined in on that class just to learn a little bit from him as well. And it was really interesting. And I ended up also going to, this was a while ago, but I went to like a Baroque thing called Toffel Music in Toronto, which is like a music festival for learning how to play in the Baroque style. And it is pretty cool to learn a little bit about that. So when you're saying about the like difference in tone and stuff, it just makes me think about, have you heard of the cellist Stephen Isserlis?
No, I'm really bad with names, but I will check it up now.
That's a niche thing. Well, not really a niche that
I
much
love
in the cello world, at least. But so Stephen Isserlis, in my opinion, he's my favorite cellist.
Can you say the name again? Sorry, Steve.
Stephen Isserlis, Isserlis.
Okay, I'll go
and
check it
he
out.
plays. Yeah, so he plays on gut strings, which is what.
Oh yeah.
Just well, they're not technically gut; they're like synthetic vinyl or whatever. But it's the same kind of thing where it's not steel strings, so there's a lot more springiness to them, and because of that springiness, the pitch is a lot less stable. It's just slight warbles, and then the tone as well is less stable. There's more of that kind of imperfect, kind of like what you're talking about with the Moog, I suppose, Simeon. But and he was saying that because of that, sometimes you can get away with using a lot less vibrato, and it still has a lot of character to it. And so like when you have an ensemble of players who are all playing on gut strings, they can just focus on the tone that the gut strings are creating rather than having to generate interest in the sound by doing a lot of vibrato. And maybe that's where that kind of unique kind of sound world comes from, is the different approach in playing that you take when you're playing on on those different gut strings.
Yeah, I wonder
I'm
because
just conjecturing, but yeah.
I don't know. I maybe this is a super niche. It probably is, but I would so be into anyone creating a string library that has sort of a Baroque sound into it, because you can sort of fake it with other libraries, but they're more geared to Hollywood romantic style, which is fine. But that just sort of pristine, pure sound, as I call it. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it's hard to often no vibrato or very little vibrato. It's something else, but again, maybe it's just for nerds like me. I don't know.
Is Rinascimento from Fluffy Audio? Is that like that, Simeon? I thought that.
Yeah.
was,
What about that?
Yeah.
I think that's like that. I know it's Renaissance, but I don't know.
Yeah. A little different.
And there's a lot of different instruments in there as well that are period instruments.
One of the problems I found with, like Sam was mentioning, solo violin libraries is there's one in particular that I was messing with, working with a violinist, and he hated it. I won't mention the name of the library.
I think we all know which one it is, but I'm not going to say it either.
Yeah. But he was spitting a lot. That's all I'll say. It was what was happening when I would try to go into the vibrato. And the phasing that was happening when I would go through different levels of vibrato was it was just terrible. And then because of the miking, you have I think it's around 300 to 400 hertz where the mic is close to that bridge, and you just hear that really awful it's like that. That really, it's okay a little bit. But when that sound is louder than the note itself, that's when it really gets very harsh and noisy. That was one of the interesting things about this new library from the Solstice Albion from Spitfire, is that they actually put those DPA mics right there, almost on the bridge, close to the strings, and that was an interesting sound. But phasing is that is just that just kills you. Now I have been trying the modeled have you guys heard of sample audio modeling? I guess the SWAM or audio modeling, where they've created these. Oh my gosh! So
No,
I'm really curious how they do that.
I don't know, but we kind of connected, and so I've been experimenting with that, and I've been using their violin model on the demos that I've been sending this violinist, and I'm telling you, there's none of that. There's just a little bit of that, but it's just no phasing because it's a model. So they're modeling the body of the violin, the physics, and the string vibrations and all of that stuff. It's fascinating. And what's happening is when you press a note, it's not going to play anything until you put some expressive control into it. Like if you've got a expression pedal or a mod wheel or a breath controller. So it's very tied into how you express it, because they're not approaching it as a sample. They're approaching it as an actual instrument.
Are you talking about sample modeling? Sorry, Simeon, I just want to...
Yeah. SWAM or sample, audio. I think so, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me make sure I'm doing the... And they've got brass and audiomodeling.com is what, and I'm going to be doing more experimentation with that. But yeah, it's fascinating. Piano tech and audio modeling, they're really breaking new ground and just continuing to improve that experience of not sampled, but creating a real virtual instrument inside. So it's exciting.
So I just want to say correction.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
Is it difficult to use, Simeon?
Oh no, because once you start into it, it kind of just pulls you into it. When you start hearing the sound coming, from your input, it makes me want to get a breath controller. I mean, I think Yamaha, back with the DX7 when they introduced breath control, they were so far ahead of their time, and it was never adopted. And I'm thinking now, okay, so you're talking about breathing. Like if you're playing a brass instrument and using a breath controller, you have that restriction where the sound will drop off if you stop breathing into that controller, just like a mouthpiece. And then even with a bowed instrument, you're going to run out of bow sooner or later. So it's almost like a breath, and so you have to know when to pull that bow back or to lift it up and rebow it. There's so much nuance that goes on that we take for granted many times.
It's kind of what you're
They're
talking
actually-
about, Sam, with if you use your voice, then you see where the breaths naturally happen. Same thing with the breath controller,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually sing the melody as you're playing it in, or sing the part and have some kind of a check and balance when you're playing the part in. Sometimes I'm playing and I'm actually singing it or just exhaling or something as I'm playing, just to kind of help set some, roadblocks or guardrails with that,
Okay, I'm just reason I had technical problems. Nothing to worry about. I apparently disappear when I'm sharing my screen because I haven't set it up properly. But I just make sure I don't talk when I share my screen, and I'll fix it until next episode. No worries. Yes, good. I really enjoy myself asking Ben questions here. We are going now for about a little bit over 1.5 hours. No, that's not true at all. An hour it is, I think. Yeah, because I started the stream before, so just that. There's no worry. I just wanted to see if you guys want to continue to do this. I think it's great. Or if we continue a little bit what's on the docket today. We have talked a little bit about these things. For example, how do you prefer to compose and all that. But unless you have something else, I'm going to ask the question. You can answer whatever you want. Do you have a preferred style of composing? Do you do it in a specific way when you work? We have talked a little bit about Ben using his instruments maybe, but maybe there are other ways. So why don't we start with Ben? Do you have when you work music, do you have a routine or... No, Simeon, Reid disappeared, so we have a...
Oh, no.
Anyway, he'll come back. Anyway.
Yeah, let's see. Well, I mentioned before about how, not so much now, but I used to just do a lot where I would record myself on cello and just stick with that to keep it simple.
So you're starting like playing lines on the cello. Is that how you work your things out?
Yeah, that's kind of what I did previously. But now with getting more into what you can do with virtual instruments, I tend to take different approaches and just try a lot of different things. Recently, so I was playing around with MIDI controllers before, but recently I've realized, if you just use a mouse and keyboard, it takes a while, but I don't know, you can, so sometimes I like to just limit myself to mouse and keyboard, just draw notes in. And I mean, I know if I was like Simeon, if I had Simeon's fingers, I would just, I would not do it that way, but I don't. And so it's just a lot smoother sometimes to just be really pecky and do it really slowly like that.
Yeah, I guess, I definitely change. We have a little bit of interesting on the screen right now, but because we know if Reid's coming back or not. If he's not, I'll fix it, but otherwise I don't worry about it right now. I hear you. So myself, I tend to have different, I have a lot of ideas in different ways, but I sometimes change depending on the song, obviously. I heard you, for example, starting with instrument, and that's probably nice if you're a really good player, or if you're a singer, for example, you get those ideas. Now it seems like Reid is back here. Hello, Reid.
There we go.
No worries. So I can just talk about myself briefly. I'm a pianist and singer, so I often work with the piano, obviously, but I've noticed, even though I have a lot of gear and things like that in front of me, that for me it's very helpful to get out of these stuff. For example, just use my voice and not worry about the piano, or go out and think, or take a walk, stuff like that. And even though I don't write a lot on paper, I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just an interesting way to try, because I get different ideas. I think very differently. So that's why I wanted to ask these questions, also to get inspiration maybe for our viewers and for myself, just to see how you have different approaches. Not to say that any is better than the other.
I'm just remembering something when I was looking at these bullet points before. There was something that I wanted to mention that I think is it's something that I've done for a long time. When I'm composing, if I just have several completely different things going at the same time and just bounce back and forth between them, sometimes that's really helpful, because then if you get stuck in one place, then just switch back over to the other one, see if you have any ideas there. And then that way there's kind of a freshness every time you're re-listening. Because I mean, you know the feeling of, okay, shall we hit play again and listen to this again and still have no idea what to do next? That's the worst feeling. And if you're always listening to something fresh, then I really like that approach. So I used that recently. I was working on the last week I was working on writing some horror music, and also working on like music for a cover of a theater song, and or it's a song from Willy Wonka, but so completely contrasting things, and I just was getting nowhere with the Willy Wonka thing. But then as I was scrolling through sounds, I was like, well, I do need to work on this horror track. So, and that sound would work for the horror track. I'll just start another project and start putting any other horror sounds. And before you know it, I've got like this whole template of sounds that I want to use later on for the horror track. So sometimes, that's a way to at least get something done. And I'm really glad that I did that, because then like a few days ago, it just really came together nicely with that track. So yeah.
It's like you get driven, or you get so laser focused on one thing and you can't get away from it, and you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you start in that law of diminishing returns, and you start getting frustrated. So that's a great point, Ben. You have to get out of your head, do something different, and you'll find that something fresh will come, and then you can come back to it. That's my problem a lot of times. I'll just be so determined to try to get this right. I've got to get this right, and then I'll spend an hour or two, and you're still not there. So you have to know when to pull the plug and go to something else. So that's great. Yeah, and when you mention Willy Wonka and horror, if you're mentioning Gene Wilder and the tunnel scene, that's kind of like a lot of kids are just like,
Yeah.
Guys, I just want to make something funny, synchronicity, whatever you want to call it. I'm actually releasing a video tomorrow that I actually made just about this. That's not the reason I'm asking a question, but I just realized now what we're talking about. That's exactly what I'm actually talking about in this video. How you can try different methods. I won't go over the whole video now, but just briefly that you have a tendency to focus on one thing, or perhaps you have a tendency to do too many things, and how you can use both of those worlds a little bit like Ben said here, and get inspiration from each other and that's something I'm trying more myself right now. So that's great to hear that other people are doing too. Yeah.
It's learning how to clear out the noise in your head. There's so many multitudes of things that we're dealing with in life and music and things, and so your brain can be at 100 different locations at the same time. A lot of times when I was traveling on the road, I would be playing the concert. My body and my fingers were there, but I had somehow transported myself somewhere else. So I was bilocating. So I was playing and doing it, but I was somewhere else. And so we have a tendency to have so much going on, and so it's like clearing out the noise sometimes, and breaking that. So in order to stay creative and come up with new ideas.
And I was first writing songs when I was in my teens. I I'd play a chord progression on the guitar, and then I'd write lyrics to it. And after a while, I had my favorite chord progressions. So like all the songs sounded the same because I was really the chord progressions would bring out similar dull melodies. So the thing that Sam did is something I discovered a long time ago, which was sing it and then treat the song that you sung as if it was a song you didn't know, and you had to then you had to figure out the chords for this song. So it's like somebody else's song. And I found that the melodies were more interesting if they weren't bounded by a chord progression. And that's sort of how I've always done it. I watched Sam's video, which is great. Everybody should watch it. But it's a little bit different from what I do. But the ideas, I learned from that actually ways to take it further, because I don't write like Sam. But and the other thing is, because I'm not a professional and I don't have to get anything done in any particular time, I like to write different kinds of music. So I might have something to do like a folk song or pop song, and then I'll start playing some world music. And so I'll be making something like right now I've been messing around with Asian music because Native Instruments just released a new library. So I've been having a lot of fun. And sometimes you have these instruments like the ones that Ben makes. I've also picked out some of Ben's instruments yesterday to get ready for this. And, as soon as you start playing them, you get ideas. So I like to work on different projects at the same time. And often I feel when I go back to the one where I was stuck, I'm refreshed and can bring something special to it because I tried to do something completely different. Like Ben was talking about horror movies and Willy Wonka.
Simeon, do you have any, or maybe you have many, but do you have any way that you prefer to work? Or
I'm just so spontaneous sometimes. Like I just finished like 14 arrangements for this project, and just looking at that is just it's mind-boggling. But most of the time, I just improvise a lot if it's something that I know. Like most of these songs the arrangements I've been working on are medleys of hymns and different songs. And so in my mind, I'll say, okay, so we're going to do this one and this one and this one. And I'll just start playing the track down. And usually with the piano, I'll just start with piano and then just going back and filling in the holes. Basically, it's just like a canvas. You start with that blank canvas and you just kind of fill in a little bit, and then you start painting in the details. I guess I'm very visual. I see music a lot. I see colors. I see settings. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll play what I see in my mind's eye when I'm playing a hymn or something. Like I'll be somewhere. It'll take me to a place, and so you have to just you play that or you paint that with sound. And then when I'm layering the orchestration in, like the strings, I try to see the string section sitting there, just like I would be watching them perform. So it's just it's there's a lot of stuff going on up here, and it comes out here, which and so when you listen back to some of the things, it's like, where in the world did that come from? Because sometimes it's just like, I didn't do that. But I'm just very visual in my mind. I see colors. Sound is colors to me, textures, and it's very interesting.
But it's great you say this because it's not that easy to. I was going to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If that works for you, that's just amazing. And sometimes it's difficult to explain, but I think it can be sometimes interesting to hear that you're more of a visual guy. It seems like if you see things.
And I do go into the piano roll sometimes because sometimes and then my typical template, I guess, if you would have one, I would have a high string. High string, low string, and then maybe the bass, and then I might have like a lead violin to go on top of that. but sometimes I'll go into the piano roll after I play something in, and I'll just kind of tighten it up and move the harmonies around a little bit until it just kind of it just till it locks in. There's just a feeling that you get when you listen to something back, and it's just like it ain't happening. But then all of a sudden you push play, and then it just like it all congeals and comes together, and it's just like, yeah, that's it. There's just something that happens when things come together. I get very frustrated in the very beginning. I hate doing the mundane things. Mundane is just not very fun, but it's necessary. It's very necessary because I hear things. Taking piano lessons was very frustrating to the piano teacher because I would hear it, and practicing was very mundane. So I would just hear it, and I would just play what she played, and it was just like it was very frustrating for them. But learning a discipline, the discipline part is very important because and I'm working on that aspect of it, because if you know other things, you can do more things. If you know the scales, if you know these certain techniques, if you learn the right way to play a violin, it's going to be able to open up new worlds to you. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I've actually recently experimented. I'll try to be brief here. Experimented with something. How can I explain it? In a way, I have so much sounds in front of me that it's so much gear in a way that it's an overwhelm. What we're gonna choose, and I have so many possibilities of my knowledge of chords and everything, right? So I've noticed that if I hear something in my head and then I start to play it on the piano, I have a tendency to get lost in all the options I have, and I forgot the original idea that I really liked. So I have this is kind of a discipline for me. I've started to discipline myself to get down the initial idea as fast as possible without messing with it. So, for example, if I hear something, a melody in my head, I record that instantly. I don't mess it. Just there it is on my computer. And then maybe I can take my time to voice that and see what I want to do in orchestrations. Because personally, if I don't do that, I start to play so much with my chords and ideas that I actually forget the idea. I save time this way too. But I have to discipline myself, like stick to the original, stick to what I hear, and then work with it, if that makes sense to you.
Yep. I think what it is you're going back and forth between improvising and other things, right? Because like when you're improvising, it's all kind of subconscious flow type stuff where you're not really thinking about what you're doing. And then once you're working out the details and the monotonous, boring stuff, that's the more consciously thinking about, okay, I need to do this because of this. And they're kind of two different ways of thinking.
Well, it's like dreaming, picturing your dream home. Then you have to hire the architect. Then you have to hire the guys to dig out the foundation. You got to hire the brick masons, the interior decorators. The visualization is the fun thing, but the work after the fact is what's hard. And I think the improvisation is basically like putting the dream out there. And then you've got to call the contractors in and start building the house on top of that.
Good analogy.
Yeah, I thought about
some time.
You could say starting is creativity, or visioning is creativity, while finishing is productivity in a way. I thought about that the other day. I got inspired by a text I read. And maybe everybody knows about that, but I actually haven't thought about that before. So for me, that really helped me to say, yeah, that's true. So there's a balance in between those. Yeah. So none of you wrote.
So David,
go ahead.
Well, David mentioned in the comments it's called synesthesia. Synesthesia.
Yeah, it sounds like you have synesthesia, probably.
All right.
Yeah. Whatever it is, I got it.
Yeah, where you associate colors with with sounds, right? I think. It sounds like you have that. Yeah.
Nice.
And just seeing visual things, and I think a lot of and it's kind of like similar to the guys that can recite pi down to the 1,000th decimal point or something. These mathematicians, I heard something, one of them talking about when they see numbers, they see these really abstract shapes, and those shapes translate into numbers. So, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'm just so amazed. The more that we take so much for granted about how we see, how we hear, how we experience the natural world around us, and like Ben, like improvising is part of the subconscious. There's so much going on. The depth of creativity and how to draw that out is incredible, because like I talk about this all the time, is like our brain is like it remembers everything that it hears and sees, and it's stored in different parts of the brain. And it's so funny because like on this last live stream, I started just hearing this F chord, this F riff on this guitar, and instantly I was singing "I Will Walk 500 Miles." It's just like it triggers things, it pulls emotions and things, and it's amazing.
Do you get if I play a sharp 9? Do you have a collar for that or something? Do you know what I mean? Do you hear?
Well, you hear it. Yeah, you can. Yeah, emotion. Yeah, it'll bring emotion. One of my favorite chords are like whatever the 11, the 9 sharp 11s or something. I don't know. I don't know what they're called, but I know they sound great.
Yeah. If you play C with a D triad on top, you get that sharp 11 sound with the 9. It's
yeah, and the tritone things, those are really awesome to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great, because I don't have your gift there, but I do have a sort of reference, a feeling of the different chords.
Yeah.
So I can't hear pitch. I have a pretty good, I don't have perfect pitch, I'm trying to say, but I can hear intervals and stuff like that. But chords I hear, and then I have an association to them.
Yeah.
So I guess you have colors now. I just find that fascinating. So cool. Nice. All right. So I wanted to ask you, nobody is writing pen and paper anymore when they compose music then?
Nope.
Nope.
Well,
I didn't think so.
Actually, I should say, and this isn't that recent, but so I was writing a cello and electronics piece a few years ago, and I did that all with pen and paper to write it, because what it was is I took a 3-second delay, and I figured out all the different ways that you can play with yourself in the 3-second delay, like things that you wouldn't expect to do with that echo. And it's just like a single line that you play. So I just wrote it out on paper.
Wow.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. I used to do the way you... Yep.
You should try... Well, okay, so how it started is I was driving to Indianapolis for an orchestral audition, and I had my Zoom recorder, and you can set a delay in it. So I set a delay, had them in the headphones, and I just started like singing and doing rhythms and stuff. And I started finding all these really cool things you can do with just that delay. And you should try this, Sam. Yeah. Like you can really go to town with, because I mean you don't have to just like sing a line and then sing another line on top of it. You can have them be like phrases that are only 3/4 the length of the delay, and then things phase with each other in weird ways, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. But.
Definitely going to try this. It could be. I'm thinking already of video material.
Could be a video idea.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Oh, that's not fun. Thanks for the idea. I really appreciate that, because that's another way you can come up with music, and I really like those new ideas. There's so many tools out there. That video thing I posted a week ago, I actually haven't tried that too much, so that was new too. But I like to find new ideas or think of new ideas. You can come up with ideas. And then this week I'm talking a little bit, which we have mentioned before, that different states tend to, at least for me, create different ideas in my head. If I'm jumping up and down for 20 minutes, I come up with very different music than if I sit still for 20 minutes. It's just, I think that this goes for everybody.
And I've been working on that, Sam. My wife will come and say, "Honey, you've been sitting there for 2 hours. You need to get up and get out of here and go for a walk." So it's just get up. Get up. That's a hard thing, man. It's hard.
But Reid,
because we get stuck in there.
Yes, absolutely. But Reid, when you compose, do you use several tracks and you come up with ideas, or do you play an instrument? Because I didn't know that if you do, or it's just piano or guitar or whatever you do.
I play piano, guitar, and mostly that. And I can play some other instruments like harmonica, which I don't use, but largely it's just singing, and then using the keyboard to put in all the other instruments. but I tend to favor instruments that are really like a piano. Like I love the accordion, and there's so many different kinds of accordions, and I end up using them a lot in the music I write.
Yeah, I like it too. I was thinking, I know it's not accordion, but I was just thinking of Piazzolla, that's bandoneon. But do you like that stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a composer to check out, seriously, if you guys haven't. Piazzolla. It's tango music, but it's well done. A big recommendation there. So there's so much gear out there, every week I feel like there's something new coming out, a new controller or whatever. Do you guys use any of this stuff? Do you find it bearable or unbearable or important, or do you have any? Does it improve your composition skill? I've noticed I've got a few things myself, so I just want to throw that out there.
Gear as far as hardware or
hardware?
What?
Hardware, anything. And I guess we're in the DAW world, but it could be outside as well. Maybe you have a specific mic or something. I don't know.
Well, I just got this the Rode NTG1, this shotgun mic that I've been using, and I've been really enjoying that. And I think you just got to find what works. I don't think gear is just like a guitar or something. You've got to, once you find the controller that you like, the keyboard controller, you're pretty much going to stick with that for as long as it's going to work. You're not going to go from what, I've had the controller behind me for 16 years, and I'm coming up on my first anniversary on this SL88 Grand.
Wow.
And whoops. Yeah, this here. Yeah. So I've had this. Hello. Yeah. Make sure you go to and watch that. No, but yeah, I've had this for about a year, and breaking those things in. But I don't see people changing, their keyboard controller that often.
No, but I can put it like
and
this.
Like,
for example, everything I do, I could do today with just keyboard. Well, I need a piano, obviously, but I could do everything today with just a keyboard and mouse. But I've got a few interfaces and things that really improve lives. And you could say, do you absolutely need it? I'm like, no, but I'm really happy. And it's not just a luxury item. It really improves workflow. I have Cubase, for example, and you can buy a unit that's called CC121. I'm not advertising here. But that unit is integrated with Cubase in such a way that I don't have to touch the keyboard anymore or the mouse. Hardly.
So it's their dedicated control surface.
Yeah. So it has everything I need. And everybody's different here, but I personally I've just noticed that just having knobs and buttons, I found more joy in it. It's like, just moving things with the mouse, it works. But it's like touching an instrument. I don't know. It feels more tactile. And I also have the S88 from Native Instruments, and it also has a lot of knobs. And it's not just, I love tech. It really has improved workflow tremendously. So I don't feel so fatigued, and it's easier to find things and stuff like that. So that's also what I want to ask, if you found that it improves your workflow like that. I have actually tried it. Sorry, I'm talking too much here, but just last thing. I've tried a bunch of different keyboards until I found this one I ended up with, and I think I'm going to stick with this. So go ahead, Simeon.
Well, with using the mouse all the time, here again, you run the risk of the repetitive stress syndrome and carpal tunnel. So changing your position of work, and I love that tactile feeling as well. I just like, just mousing around all the time, that gets very dangerous, but having a knob, having a control, and I think even the big touch screens now, they're where you're reaching out and touching that. But I still like to have a physical fader or a knob or a button, something that gives me that feedback, that physical touch, that feedback that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. I just sorry here, trying too many windows at the same time. I just got there's a free program out there. I forgot what it's called. Open Stage. Typical me. I'm going to be known for the guy who never remembers.
Touch OSC? Is that Touch OSC?
No, this is a free program. Actually, it's somebody programming it. So you have to program it a little bit, unfortunately. But what what it does is that if you have any kind of screen like an iPad or a tablet, it connects with your computer and you can create any buttons you want on that screen.
Yeah.
And this is amazing, because there's so many shortcuts and macros you can do that obviously you can do it all, but you don't have to mouse around, as you said, and you don't have to do all these clicks. So I know we're getting to nerd territory here, but if anyone who's serious about composing on a computer, these things really make a difference in terms of getting fatigued and not getting frustrated. I'm going to look it up later. I'm just afraid that if I turn Windows down, I'm going to turn everything off here.
Have any of you done anything with auto hotkey?
No, what is that? Let me know.
That's another program for doing macros and key combinations and stuff.
Yeah, and Coyote MIDI.
I use Stream Deck for all my
Stream Deck is
hotkeys.
nice.
Yeah.
I just want to say it's called Open Stage Control because I looked it up, and the good thing about that is you need some work, but you can do it exactly the way you want. And even though Open Stream Key is way easier, obviously, and physical buttons, the good thing about this Open Stage Control is that it doesn't cost a thing, and you can just set it up exactly the way you want it on your touch screen. But there's no physical buttons, though.
Is this it, Sam? Is that it there?
Could be. I can't see on the screen. It's very small, but it could be. And it's free to download, but then you have to set it up yourself, and that is some work, and maybe you don't want to do that. But
So it's like an open source.
Yeah, I think that's it. And there are manual, tutorials online how to do that, and it's a rabbit hole. I just want to warn people, but I am finding that it's quite interesting, seriously, to use. Oh, also another thing I really want to recommend.
What's good about?
Go ahead.
I think what's good about all these tools is that you can customize them to your own workflow.
Yeah.
And just regardless of which one you use, you set up. Over time, I find out that the things I'm always doing, I get on the front page, and the stuff that I don't do so much, I have to go through menus for. So I'm just constantly getting to that place with Cubase and with Premiere and all my other programs.
Yeah, there was I'm not gonna say things I forget anymore. Get away with it. But I do want to also recommend. It's something that it took me a while to get used to, but now it's a no-brainer for me. And it's have a roller ball. It's called, right? Not a normal mouse.
Trackball.
Thank you, trackball. Because my hand is still instead of moving around, and I've noticed. I'm getting older, I guess, but it really makes a difference if you're gonna sit a lot and work with these things. So. Personal preference, obviously, but that's something that really changed workflow here.
There was a phase where, when I was first playing around with Reaper a lot, where I was determined to figure out how do I navigate anywhere I want to in Reaper without using the mouse.
Yeah.
Because if you set up all the shortcuts right, you can find a way. You can do anything in Reaper, and then you find yourself several months later being like, wait, when's the last time I made any music?
Exactly. Good point, Ben. Seriously.
Yeah.
Reaper is a good program.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing if you are willing to spend the time to go down the rabbit hole. But so something I was going to say as we're talking about gear is that, I mean, you don't need it, but I think it's the thing that if it gets you in front of your computer or it gets you in front of your stuff, and then once you're there, then then other things can happen.
Well,
toys to get you going.
Yeah, you want to get to a state where you have templates to set it up, so you don't have to. You just start, and there it is. Because obviously, with all this stuff, you have to set it up, and it can take a while.
Yeah.
Template building. Oh my God. Oof. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not fun, but it's great. I've done a few now, and it just speeds up workflow. I don't have to look for presets so much before. Okay. All right. But I was thinking then, but Ben, do you actually use your instrument in a DAW? If you compose, do you sort of record yourself into the DAW and then you work around that? Or do you play more with the keyboard? How do you?
I don't know, kind of a combination. It's I was going to say, I don't know if you guys get this, but you do something, like you make something, you write something, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I know how to do this. Yeah. I know how to write music. And then you start something new and you're like, No, I don't know how to compose. So in terms of, well, what do you usually do? Well, the last thing I did that worked was this, but I'll probably come up with some different workflow for like how much I record on cello and how much just with MIDI on piano.
Yeah, I mostly do things because it's convenient. It's not really that I'm aiming for a specific technique. It's more like what is a fast workflow. But I do want to mention something. Many years ago when I lived in America, in Boulder, Colorado, I have an interesting composing teacher there. And, well, we talked about many things, but one thing I remember, he said, I work only in Finale. Finale was big then. It's a notation program for those who don't know. I'm sure you do know. And we used that to its full potential, not in terms of, well, here's how you make notes and notation, but as a composition tool. And I thought it was really cool. And I've been looking to see if I can do that more with sequencer. So, for example, you take a line and then you reverse it in Finale, like that. So you have the exact same line, but it's reversed or mirrored. I hope you understand what I mean with that. But you get so much more music out of very little. You don't have to think. You don't have to actually write all the notes. So if you do, C to F, you can just reverse that or mirror it. You have a similar feeling, even though it's a variation. So that was just one example how we work the composition. And for me, it was a very different approach. It felt a little bit less emotional. It felt more like data and math. But it was still very interesting. And I still got a lot of mileage out of that. Something I'm thinking more of today when I try to milk an idea.
That's what John Williams did with the Star Wars theme. He took boom bum ba 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 bum bum Born Free, and then he inverted it bum bum ba da da bum bum. So
yeah. Actually, all of his themes are extremely simple like that. He loves his octaves and fifths,
but effective.
Yeah. Oh, nice voice there. Yeah, so there's a lot to say there. I just I thought it could be an interesting topic to see.
Don't fail me again, Sam. You might regret doing it again.
God, I'm discovering you guys are these multi-talented people here. That's nice.
Very multi-talented.
All right, so next episode we're all gonna have a different voice. No, I will see.
Okay.
Who was that? I didn't hear. Anyway, I just.
Papo Chicho.
Okay, yeah, you have that doll. That's true. So, all right. Well, maybe we milk that.
I'm not going to join in.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, oh, Eddie. Good night.
And don't get me started. I'm a voice talent too. Don't get me started. I won't do it.
Okay.
Anyway.
On to the next topic.
Sure. Yeah, we can go to the next stop. Yeah. You can say that with Darth Vader voice. We can go to the next stop.
Yeah.
So.
Let's go to the next topic.
Okay. Pretty good. Pretty good. This is silly, but just for fun. Mac or PC, and why?
Mac.
Mac?
Never had a Mac before, but
Yeah.
I got a Mac Mini like a couple of weeks ago. It was my first. Well, I mean, I've seen Macs before, but I've never actually had to deal with them very much. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting learning curve figuring my way around that.
You have a Mac now.
Yeah, I got a Mac so I could pile VSTs for Mac, but that's another story. No, I'm a PC person. I don't really know anything about Mac, so I don't know if it's better or not. But yeah, that's a whole other.
But do you find anything now that this is better with a Mac or worse or something?
Let's see. Well, I don't know. I mean, it looks a little nicer, I guess, but in terms of, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay.
Windows 11's coming.
That'll be interesting.
It was never supposed
What's
to come.
the name of the composer blogger? I don't know if her name is Catherine Marie Dorn or something like that.
Catherine. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Cinesamples.
I'm getting the name wrong, but she used to work at Cinesamples, and now she's a successful film composer. Anyway, she's a YouTuber, and she just did an extremely comprehensive video about all the reasons why she switched from Apple to PC.
Oh, really?
And many reasons, but she, price. is definitely, you have to pay a lot of
That's the
money
reason.
to get an Apple computer, and you can get something, you can get the same kind of power for a lot less money. And she had a lot of reasons. But I think that's a
Catherine
big
Byrne.
one
Yeah, yeah.
for me. That's all I need to be concerned with.
The Apple tax, the Apple tax. Yeah.
Well, Mac
But I
seems
used-
amazing,
I
and I've
used to
never
have-
had it, but I'm always impressed by the computers, and I know a lot of people swear by them and all that stuff, and I have nothing against that. I'm not a fanboy, or I really don't care as long as it works, but I have to say, when I look at the price tag, it's an easy choice.
Well, I've got a
when-
I've got a 2013 MacBook, and I've got tons of iPads, and the MacBook on the road. I mean, still a 2013 MacBook. It's still doing pretty good, and playing like one or two virtual instruments on it live. It seems like it's still keeping up. The scary thing about the new Macs using the problem is the memory is soldered into the motherboard, into the logic board. The expansions, that's the biggest drawback to, I think, the Mac
Oh, really?
the Mac world, because used to, you could put your own hard drive in, you could expand your RAM if you wanted to, but because they're making things so thin and smaller, and everything is soldered to the logic board, so you have to anticipate. Okay, so do I want 16 megabytes of RAM, gigs of RAM, or 64 gigs of RAM? And you have to do that going in, because once you're in there, and then the issue with SSDs. So you've got SSDs soldered to the logic
really?
board. And there's this thing. Okay, so how long is that SSD going to last? Because SSDs typically have a short life. Well, not a short lifespan, but there's a definite time when there is an end of life to those. There's only so many times they can write and erase and rewrite those cells on the drive. So that's another consideration. So there's lots of things to be considered. So if I buy a new,
when I first went to the Mac 20 years ago, the difference between the Mac and the PC was enormous.
Yes, that's
The
true.
XP and some of the Vista and things like that, they were just terrible. And the Mac was a wonderland.
Actually, XP was
I
good.
mean, it
Sorry.
was just every single time I used it, there would be like, oh, it does this, and it worked perfectly in every way, and then it just did all these kinds of wow things. So every time I turned it on, it made me happy, and I don't think my PC made me happy. It did its job, but it didn't dazzle me.
Yeah.
And but then PCs got better, and I think that the Mac began by chasing the artists. They wanted to make things for filmmakers and for musicians and everything, and I think that they kind of moved over to making iPads and phones, and the PC said, we're going to go after that market. We're going to go after painters. We're going to go after graphic designers. We're going to go after heavy. And so, you can draw on the screens, and there's all these things that you can do that they just really made it better and better. And then when you add in that it's cheaper, it's hard to resist. I think for musicians, I think when you look at the forums, you can see the composers slowly drifting away from the Mac to the PC.
I think the
Just doesn't make
scalability of
sense.
the scalability of the PCs, especially when you're using Vienna Ensemble, where you can have a dedicated PC just for certain sample libraries. So the scalability and the cost effectiveness of being able to do that on the Windows platform and trying to do the same thing on the Macintosh platform is, there's no real comparison to doing that. But
And
I
there's
think a
also this-
hybrid, well, a hybrid
I'm sorry,
approach is
go ahead.
really, well, a hybrid approach is good. Like what being able to use the best of what Apple has with the mobile stuff, like the iPads and that type of thing, and tying it in with the PC. And I think what Microsoft does they come out with like Vista. Vista was just terrible, but then it gave birth to XP. Then you had Windows 8.
Yeah.
Oh,
Never mind. XP
okay,
came before,
so-
but XP
so
was pretty good.
Okay. So then they mess it up with Vista.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but then they fix it with Windows 7. Windows 7 was just a great. And
Yeah.
then they mess it up again with Windows 8.
It's true.
Then they try to make a turn with Windows 10, and then finally here we are at Windows 11. And early reports from Windows 11 are saying that it is going to be the new XP or the new Windows 7. So it's like a cycle. Well,
It's
as
not
far
the
as
new Vista.
Well, if
It's
they're
not the new
following the pattern, they should be a bad version, right?
right. Yeah.
well, hopefully
Well,
it's
we'll
going to
see.
be a good version.
Yeah,
You
hopefully.
know, just
And
from
as
early.
long- just
Well,
as
early
long
re-
as it's not the new Windows Me. That's all I'm.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
you know
oh,
about
yeah.
that one. Oh god, yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, Clippy and all that. Yeah, so I think, hang on. Yeah, you remember Clippy. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
just
Bless his
wa-
heart.
Bring it
I just
back.
wanted to say
Bring
though, I
back
mean, I think
Clippy.
it seems to me like it's a preference. We've talked a little bit what DAW, for example, and I know some people fight this is the best one and all that. I just want to say again, it depends on what you're used to, what you like, what you prefer, and I think it's the same. You can probably find a lot of things that are not great with PC and versus they're greater on Mac and all that kind of stuff. So I just hope though, unless I'm wrong, that I don't know if Mac can keep these prices up because they have such a fan base, because they do, and such a high market share. But otherwise, I don't know why they're not more competitive pricing with PC, so they can be, I don't know. Somebody who's smarter will tell me, but that would be smarter to me, so you could choose more what you're interested in and choose your preferred style. I don't know.
They've never been that way.
No,
They've
that's
always
true.
charged more.
Yeah.
They've never tried to compete, and I just think they've lost out. On the other hand, I would say that if you're a young musician and you're able to get a hold of some kind of Mac, Logic is just one of the best deals around. And it used to cost a ton of money to get Logic. And I don't know, it's like next to nothing. And a young person can do everything they need to do. Right
You're
within
absolutely
Logic.
right.
I know I did that for years.
But even GarageBand, seriously. I mean, Logic is
Yes.
way better. But even GarageBand you can do a lot with. So
Yes,
you're absolutely
yes.
right. And you're right. You can even do it on an iPad. You can do it on an old Mac. It's true. So yeah.
I have a confession, which is that when I had somehow given up music for many, many years and just couldn't get myself back to turn the DAW on, I had anxiety about that. And I started composing on the iPad. I got all these applications, and there are in fact some pretty good DAWs on the iPad. So I started writing music on these DAWs on the iPad. And a lot of the things that we're familiar with, like Fab Filter and things like that, you can find on the iPad, only a lot cheaper. And so I started writing music on the iPad, and then I eventually realized that was a ridiculous thing to do. And because, it had no memory, it just kept crashing on me. So I then started up with the iPad, with the PC again.
Right.
But it got you back there. It got you back into it because the way the iPad is, it's a very personal thing. So it's instantly on, and you connected with it very easily. So it's like it brought you back in.
I get-
That's
And
really
there was a whole community. There's something called the Audio Buzz Forum where people
yeah.
that I was very active in, and they talk about all this. And in the Audio Buzz Forum, people think a $10 synth is like crazy expensive. They want it for free or
Yeah.
$5, but like $20 is, it's just a whole different way of looking at things because they don't want to pay $10 for, and oh boy, if you switch to virtual instruments, I could just imagine what they think, with Spitfire and some of these other libraries out there.
Or orchestra
But-
tools. Yeah.
Yeah. But it just was so much fun but it was the iPad that got me going, and I totally recommend anybody who wants to put a toe into this kind of work and they don't have the money for something, get an iPad. You can program synths on it. You can write music on it, and a lot of the stuff that's available for a lot of money is available very cheaply on the iPad.
Actually, it is the best, but I do want to say, and I'm not a proponent of tabs, but BandLab exists now for free on tablets as well. It's not as good as GarageBand, but that's also a possibility.
Well, now with this latest, they've got BandLab Studio now that is a PC application, and it integrates with Cakewalk, so you can do a composition on the iPad and open Cakewalk, pull it in, the multi-tracks in. So
nice.
They are fine-tuning that a little bit
Okay.
with collaboration and stuff. Yeah, so you can do your composition on the tablet. You can even, they've got one of the best browser-based DAWs. You know, it uses the Chrome, and so, but everything, they're Cakewalk and BandLab are building a really interesting ecosystem for collaborative composition. So, you know, exchanging things, audio and that type of thing. So it's that's coming, and that's a really cool thing. You can do it on your phone. Do it on your phone, your iPad, and everything will tie in together. You can pull it up on your DAW, and everything kind of translates that way. So that's a real exciting thing that's coming, or that's being refined and developed.
Nice.
There's two things. There's Cubases, which is a really nice DAW, and everything you write in Cubases can then just be dragged
to
into
Cubase. It's all
to Cubase and taken to another level. And the other thing that I think where the iPad is actually superior is it has a lot of touch interface instruments, and some of the stuff that they have is quite miraculous. And there are things that, for some reason, like Moog does a lot of synths for the iPad, and they don't do them for the PC or Mac. You know, so you have Moog clones, but you have the actual Moog
I love them.
applications on
I love the
iPad.
Mini Moog on the iPad. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've heard that there's a reason that for the music apps, they usually stick with Apple, and it's because there are, if you're trying to test out if it works, there's only a limited number of types of iPhones or tablets out there that are Apple, but like the Android, there's just so many things to have to be compatible with.
Yeah.
And so,
Absolutely true.
and so it's just a huge pain. So, and so as far as Android music apps, I've always had an Android phone, but I got one. This is like maybe, I don't know how many years ago, but I've spent so many hours on that. And maybe it's kind of similar to you, Reid, where it's like you don't feel like opening up your DAW, but hey, I do have this app here. Maybe I'll just mess around with this a little bit. And then before you know it, you've spent a couple hours just messing around, and then you have these ideas from what you were doing, tapping away, which once you put it into the DAW, it's like, whoa, now I have so much more power than I did when I was trying to mess around, because the app is kind of clunky. It's very limiting, and it's very hard to do anything in it. But so then you go back to your DAW, and it's like, wow, look how much power I have here. This is amazing. And then do more.
But that's the magic of using the mobile. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's got this really cool modular synthesizer. I've spent so many hours like just playing around with linking different things up to make really weird sounds, like just really things that you would not expect to hear from like a synthesizer. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, it's
That's
kinda
quite
fun.
incredible. We can do that with our little phones. It reminds me of Reason. I know Reason still exists and they have new updates, but I haven't played with that program forever. But when you showed that screen there, Ben, all those,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to Reason in a lot of ways. This app.
I think
It's
they
a really good way to program synths because
Yeah.
you can lay in bed and just program synths.
Yeah.
I think I created a lot more patches on the iPad because when you sit down at the computer, a lot of times I just really don't want to be sound designing. I want to make music,
yeah.
but with the iPad, it's actually harder to write music,
Yeah.
but the sound design is great.
Oh, really?
So I was always making presets on it.
It's interesting. I used to teach music in school, and we had iPads, and I used to GarageBand. That's why I really thought that iPad is great for this. It's just so easy to set up, and it all works. But I like what you said, Reid. I'm thinking how I can maximize my workflow by spending time creating patches in bed. But I think my love life will suffer then. So
You mean like how I can waste more of your time?
yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't be so good. All right, cool. Anything we should add there? I wanted to ask Ben
Well,
something,
I
but
just want to thank Ben. I think
yeah,
for coming on here and for all these amazing programs that I've enjoyed using so much. And so,
Oh, thanks for
thank
having
you.
me.
well, actually, I've set things up now, so hopefully my voice doesn't disappear now when I share screens. I did mess about, so I'm gonna share a screen of. Well, hold on a second. I'm gonna share the right one. Ben has agreed to actually have a giveaway for this episode. You might know that already. And he said that he will give away, hopefully you still hear me, should you, pattern strings that you now can see on your screens. It's a really great library that I'm thinking of. I have to get myself. Sorry, I haven't bought it yet, but I haven't got a chance to. And I've checked it in lately, and it's really, really, really amazing. So check that library out. But if you comment on the video, not the live one, unfortunately, but the one that will be up in a day or two, if you leave a comment there, then you can be a lucky winner of this fantastic library by Ben. And we will announce that winner by random choice the next episode. But in any case, I really recommend you go and check out these libraries if you haven't, because they're quite something. And the prices are really worth it as well. Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. Anything you guys
I
want to
was-
add?
Well, I was just going to mention about pattern strings. So I don't know if you remember, Simeon, when you did a live stream on, I think it was, oh, you did it on a bunch of different instruments. But with oscillation strings, you were saying, you were trying to layer together a bunch of instances of it, and it was killing your computer.
Oh, that was me.
because-
That was me. That was not Simeon. That was me, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, all right.
No worries.
Okay. Well, anyways, and I was thinking when you're trying to layer lots of instances together, I should just bounce them together as combinations so it's less audio to play back. And ended up spending. I was just going to do that, but then ended up being this huge upgrade to Pattern Strings version 2, where I changed the whole interface as well and added a bunch of stuff.
Wow.
So that was all because of the live stream. So.
All right. Oh yeah, maybe that was Simeon. I don't know. No, because I had some performance issues about oscillation, but then you sent me some nice tip, which I can't explain here. But that fixed
that's
it.
right.
That fixed it. That fixed the samples. Yeah. So that's really good.
Yeah. So Simeon we did do a live stream, and that's where we were talking about the layer.
Yeah, we were killing the CPU. It was just like
Yep.
it was you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now if you load all 4 instruments in both patterns, depending on what patterns you're playing, like a lot of times it's only like 20 megabytes or something like that. Because
Wow.
everything's been bounced down. So it's a huge organizational challenge, but kind of fun once I finally got it done
Wow.
after a couple months.
Actually, Ben, how do I know if there are updates? I think I'm now. I wasn't before. I wasn't on your list. But do you mail out if there are updates or anything like that? Or
I think Glenn at Loot Audio sends out updates for he sends out updates. So you should have gotten an update. Although in the future, I think because I'm switching to Pulse for downloading things, and I think the Pulse app also automatically would notify you as well.
Okay, so like I'm just did a search through my Loot Audio, and they sent an email about Sospiro strings had been updated to 1.2. So
have
I think
oscillation
Pulse-
strings been updated lately or not?
No.
No. Okay. Then that's probably why I haven't got it.
There's this post on the VI Control forum, which is the Ben Osterhouse appreciation thread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's if you go there a lot, you're always going to find out about any Ben news, like
right.
updates.
Yeah. Okay, guys. That seems to be a pretty good episode today, unless you have anything to add. I wanted to ask if there are any news of anything you've heard this week that you find interesting that you want to mention, any library or anything that has happened in the audio world, in the composing world.
Well, it's really late, but I think that the new native instrument, they've changed the name of their world libraries from Discovery series to Spotlight series. But the new one is an Asian library, and well, many people probably thought it was going to be a Chinese library. It's actually Pan-Asian, and it sort of has 6 Chinese instruments, 3 Japanese, and 3 Korean, if I'm correct. And there are not a lot of Korean instruments available in virtual instruments anywhere. And there's one Japanese instrument, I forget the name of it, that is also a rarity. And but it has amazing percussion, because instead of just having Chinese percussion and Japanese percussion or Korean percussion, it's all laid out in one set if you want. So you can play all these drums together, and that's really amazing. And I think I think there are going to be a lot of soundtracks made with this library. And the instruments are really quite good. Quite good. They're very close to the level of the kind of solo Asian instruments that you pay over $100 for one. And this is $99 for the whole thing.
Or
And,
75 if you have a previous of the level.
yes, if you got the free Yangchen, then it's 79.
That's 79. It does seem very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very good value for money. I don't know why I can't find it, getting older, but it does seem like a good price.
I think it's an incredible price, and I've been messing about with it for, since I got it. And I mean, whenever you have a group library, there's some that are stronger than others. But there's so much good in this. And I will always say that people should not look at these kinds of libraries and say, I don't make Chinese music, I don't make Korean music. And it's kind of like, well, if you don't have Omnisphere, you might not make any of the music with the sounds in Omnisphere. I mean, if you get this, you will be inspired, and you'll want to bring it into the music that you do write. It's in the same way that, like Ben's libraries, if you get something that's interesting, and the sounds of these East Asian library, they're just really, really good. And I'm particularly excited about the Korean ones because they're just really new to me. I know the other instruments.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one example. There's a Korean instrument that's like, it looks like a koto, the way that's shaped, big stringed instrument, trapezoidal type of instrument, and it's bowed. How about that, Ben? It's bowed on one side, but on the virtual instrument, they've got about 14 notes of pizzicato on the right side. So you can hit a bowed note on one side, and then with your right hand, you can be playing a pizzicato pattern against that. And it's really, really nice. And I assume that has something to do with how that particular instrument is played, but we don't normally think that way. When I think of low string libraries, I'm pushing a button, pushing a thing, and then it's going from pizzicato to back to legato and stuff like that. And this is a way where you can play, a legato passage and then play pizzicato opposite at the same time. And I think I want to do the same thing with regular orchestral libraries. No reason why we can't do multis that work exactly like that. So I think it's inspirational, and there's some really good flutes in it that sound interesting and great. So who doesn't need another interesting flute?
No, I agree with you. I've only heard the demos, but I'm actually quite impressed. If you think about that, it's only 99/79, then it's actually pretty good. I'm trying to not buy more libraries at the moment, but Simeon is checking things out. Okay, cool. Oh, you hear my children in the back here. Sorry. Well, I just wanted to say again, if you are listening to this podcast as audio podcast, we will really appreciate it if you can give us a good review where this is possible. I think on Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called, you can do that. It will help us to get more viewers. We will really appreciate that. And also, if you are looking at the YouTube version of this, don't forget to comment, and then you might win one of, or I should say, the pattern strings by Ben Osterhouse. So, anything else, guys, we should add, or are we ready to wrap it up? Yeah? Well, I really want to thank you, Ben. It was so kind. You have been very nice to all of us. I've reviewed your libraries, so has Simeon, and now you're here in our podcast. And I really appreciate that you took your time, and I wish you the best. I hope you continue to make great libraries. Seems like you are. I think you have a niche special market here, and I think it's going to go great for you if you continue in this vein. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you come and visit again, sit in on another episode.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
absolutely.
Cool. Well, it's fun talking with you guys.
Yeah.
Likewise.
So anything else, guys, or are we just going to say...
Nostalgic.
Anything else you guys want to add before we say goodbye?
I think that's my chord. That's one of my favorite chords.
Oh, what is that? That sounds like a... Oh, yeah. Some flat fives. Is it half diminished?
So it's a C7 over an A chord. A chord, C7 in the bass.
Yeah, that's... what is it?
Thanks for joining us once again
Okay.
at the Composers Roundtable.
Play it again, Simeon.
Play it again.
Yeah, that's what they call me. Well, anyway, this has been lovely, and thank you all guys for who participated in the chat. We always appreciate that as well. So until next time, let's see if we have another guest. Then we haven't decided that yet, but hopefully we have. Or Matthias is back with us. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
All right. See you guys later.
See ya.
See you. Thanks.
Bye.